Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. It's been a bit of a tough week for Mark Carney and the Liberals. I know it's only a few months into Mark Carney's first full term in office, but the thing is that business confidence matters. And if the business community is confident that Mark Carney is going to deviate heavily from what Justin Trudeau was doing in office, then we wouldn't be seeing the terrible economic numbers coming out like we've just seen. This shouldn't be shocking to anyone because Mark Carney was quite literally Justin Trudeau's economic policy advisor for 5 years. Why would he act differently in office when Justin Trudeau pretty much just copy paste did whatever Mark Carney told him to, and now Mark Carney is the prime minister? We really didn't swap out Trudeau for Carney on economics. We swapped out Carney as advisor for Carney as advisor and prime minister. And now our economy has lost 40,000 jobs just in the month of July. The public sector is still doing great, by the way. We are still hiring people into public sector service for some reason, even though our actual private sector is withering and dying on the vine. I'm going to get into some of the details here. I think Kirk Lubomov on X did a great job of breaking down what happened in just the last 7 days. Not a lot of it is very good. Much of it hasn't come with bad results quite yet, but I think we can predict what's going to happen when the government just shovels more money into the economy in hopes of saving industries where the money isn't the problem, the efficiency is the problem. Anyways, but before we get into it, guys, make sure to like the video if you like the channel, subscribe if you are not yet a subscriber. We're trying to hit 100,000 subscribers by mid-December of this year, so I don't have to buy my friends dinner. And then also leave a comment. It helps us in the algorithm, and I do like scrolling through and seeing what people are saying about the topics. But steel yourselves, my viewers, because we are going to go through this list put out by Kirk Lubomov. Great list. Make sure you go out and follow him. I will be linking his X account in the description and pinned to the top of the comments. Really good person to follow for news from a conservative perspective. He's not even really a news guy, but he puts out a lot of news updates. But he says Canada's week recap. Mark Carney announces a $700 million loan guarantee for the softwood lumber sector. I know he is basically trying to save the softwood lumber industry in the wake of 25% tariffs being put onto it by the Americans, but this isn't going to save it. It is just going to prolong its suffering. And I'm not saying that we should let the softwood lumber industry go. The whole point is that we should be lowering taxes. We should be lowering regulations, especially on the provincial level. And that's why I work with One BC, because you actually need a party who will actually heavily lower taxes and deregulate. But just putting more money into these industries that are hurt is not actually helping them. It's kind of the idea like we look like we're helping because we cut a check, and it's like, okay, I guess that will preserve those jobs. I guess it will preserve the industry. But the big pivot that Canada needs to be making, that Mark Carney doesn't seem to want to do, is we need to become more free market. We need to become more competitive. This is more bloated. This is more government involved, and it's terrible. Second point Kirk has here is 500 million investment into supercharging product and market diversification. So a bunch of more subsidies, just 500 million more in subsidies. So we have 700 million that he's given out to the softwood lumber industry, 500 million investing in supercharging product and market diversification. So we are already at 1.3 billion extra spending announced in 1 week. Now, third one, companies contracting with the federal government will be required to use Canadian lumber, which means that prices are going to go up. Because naturally, when you're only able to get your product from one particular industry, that means that those companies can then charge you more. So anyone contracting with the federal government, if they're creating the new modular homes that Mark Carney wants them to, well, those modular homes are going to come in at a far higher price than anyone would actually have assumed. Carney was pitching it as a very cheap solution to the housing crisis. And in fact, it may be an expensive solution to the housing crisis if he's going to force them to only use Canadian lumber companies, which means that they effectively have a monopoly over the resources that these companies need to build these homes. Going down again, 50 million to reskill, upskill, and income support for softwood lumber workers. I don't know why we need 50 million to reskill and upskill people if we're already giving the industry 700 million. If we're giving them 700 million in loan guarantees, then we should also require them not to be firing anyone at the same time. We have Mexico's president said no to a bilateral trade deal with Canada. Yeah, that was an embarrassing story that happened a couple of days ago. The Mexican president, Claudia Sheinbaum, doesn't even want to talk with Carney. Next one down. This is not about the Liberals, but it is still stupid. Nova Scotia bans hiking, fishing, and camping and using vehicles in the woods. Yes, you can't even camp on your own land. You can't go hiking if you own every hectare that you're walking over. That is against the law because Nova Scotia doesn't want to do proper forest management. So instead, you can't even walk into the forest and sit down and eat, like have a picnic. No flames involved, just eating pre-wrapped sandwiches. That is against the law in Tim Houston's Nova Scotia. Tim Houston, supposedly a conservative, by the way. Now, next one down, Canada's manufacturing PMI rose to 46.1%, but still well below the 50% threshold. We have trade deficit widens to 5.9 billion in June, and we used to be a net exporter country because we do so many raw resources, but our exports are down and our imports are up. Exports, the next line down, exports to the U.S. increased by 3.1 month by month, but down 12.5 year on year. So our exports to the United States went up in July, but compared to the overall year, we are still 12.5% down. Exports to other countries is down 4.1% month over month, but up 14.7 year over year. That is one bright spot, but it's because obviously we are not shipping to the United States as much. But I will make the point that 12% reduction in US exports is not good for us because that is our 80% of our exports go to the US. So the part that represents 20% is up 14.7, but the part that is representative of 80% of our exports is down 12.5. Another one, total exports declined 12.8% in Q2. So that's exactly right. Overall, exporting is just down in general. Student unemployment is at the highest level since 1993. Toronto's real estate listing hit a record high of 30,220 in July. And then we say a Canadian consumer insolvency in June saw the largest volume since 2010. And then employment falls 41,000 jobs in July. And yes, and then Kirk ends this post off by saying, oh, and Team Canada still hasn't tracked a single penny into Canada. And he's right. All of the meetings between premiers, all of the elbows up rhetoric trying to build an east-west economy is not getting any outside investment. And it's key because if you're increasing productivity and trying to build a better economy, that doesn't just mean we're increasing productivity domestically. That means that in trying to increase our productivity domestically or trying to make it a better place to invest, it's not just going to be us reinvesting our own dollars, that's still important, but we should also want to be the type of economy where people from outside of Canada are putting their money into our industries, putting money into our manufacturing, our oil and gas, our softwood lumber industry, our, not exactly real estate, because you don't want people buying stuff up. You maybe want outside dollars to develop in Canada, develop more real estate. But the thing is, we're not attracting anything because it's great rhetoric to say that we're building an east to west economy. But what are you doing to actually make it attractive? You can't just say it. You need to lower taxes, lower regulations, allow people to do what's best for themselves with their own money. And I guess that sounds very unpatriotic to a liberal, but it's just the truth. Whenever there is an economic boom, it's not because people are being told by the government what to do with their money. It's that they are doing with their money what they want to do. And it turns out the selfish thing to do that most people want to do, and it's not bad to be selfish on an economic level, but the selfish thing is to invest your money in an area where it's going to grow, to put your money in a business that's going to, it's going to profit you, something like that. But what are the Liberals doing in the midst of these bad job numbers? Because 41,000 for Canada is absolutely crippling. It was supposed to be bad in the United States when they just didn't gain any jobs in the month of July. And now we're going to try and happy talk our way through 41,000 job losses. Check this out right here from the Liberal Party. We're going to need Canadian lumber to build Canada strong. And it's just a CTV News headline repurposed. Carney announces new support measures for softwood lumber, in which the lumber companies are still apparently going to be like laying people off, considering the Liberals are spending $50 million on retraining and upskilling. That's not exactly a great sign if you're supporting them and you're also predicting that they're going to start laying people off. Again, why don't they just cut the lumber industry's taxes? Cut every single industry's taxes, and they can survive in a harder economic situations. But the Liberals don't like that because guess what? Cutting someone's taxes doesn't really come with a ribbon cutting. It doesn't come with a press conference because you're not announcing you're doing anything for them. You're announcing you're going to stop taxing them as much, but it's not really something that usually gets people, it's not really something that usually gets you plaudits from the media. And the Liberals are chasing the recognition for doing something, because cutting people's taxes isn't doing something by the left standards. Giving them a check to continue struggling onward is somehow doing something, even though it hasn't fixed the profitability problems with the industry. Plus, these are loans that presumably will need to be paid off in one way or another. But getting back to the Liberal social media, I always like to look at the Liberal social media because it really kind of tells you what they want you to think about what's going on. And it tends to be a little bit, it says a lot of it says a lot about the state of the country. Here's what that the Liberals released a couple of days ago. And by the way, they know about the job numbers as of a couple days ago. They are obviously going to see the job numbers before we do.
Canada has what the world needs. From coast to coast to coast, we have extraordinary innovators, talented workers, and bountiful natural resources. In challenging times, Canadians unite because we know that collectively we can give ourselves far more than any country can take away. That's the spirit of the One Canadian Economy Act, to bring provinces and territories and Indigenous communities together to build one Canadian economy and get major projects built faster.
Well, that's hilarious because the thing he immediately said right after passing Bill 5, the One Canadian Economy Act, the Major Projects Act, I just called the Get Stuff Done Act because that's the silly impression they want you to take away from it. That they said they're going to get stuff done, which means they are getting stuff done. No, they're not getting any of the projects done because right after passing it, Carney went to First Nations groups, he went to the Inuit, he talked to environmental groups, and he basically guaranteed them they're still, all the projects to get fast track still should have to go through a consultation process on the environment with First Nations people, which means how is it a fast tracking process if you still need to go through needless consultations to get to the point where you can be fast tracked? It just sounds like it's the same process, but we're saying it's fast when it isn't. But this is the sort of things they're putting out, just pablum nothingness of commercials talking about how united we are. And they're talking about how we need to invest in ourselves and we have more in our own countries than the world could possibly give us. Well, why are our exports down? If we have so much to offer, why are our exports down? And our exports are down because there really isn't much for Canada to offer with the current policy. We could be the richest country on the planet, but with the current policy and tax rates and low confidence that the private sector has in the government to do the right thing, you can't build a good economy. You can have poverty in the richest, most bountiful countries on the planet, or you can have massive wealth in countries where there's actually really nothing going on there, but the policies are great. That's how Singapore has so much money. That's why Hong Kong was so rich for a long time. There are other countries out there where they don't really have that much going for them, but good government policy is actually something really good that you can build an economy on. And we have crappy government policy, and the only thing that props us up is that we still have those good natural resources, and some people will bite the bullet in order to gain access to them. But anyways, that should be it for this video, guys. I'm predicting within the next month or two, we will probably start to see the honeymoon period for the Liberal Party wear off in the polls. You can't have jobs reports like this. You can't have bad export data like we see coming in and still have people say, well, it's elbows up. Don't worry. It's still Donald Trump's fault, because nobody's really investing in our economy. Yeah, some of our exports to the rest of the world are up, but it's only because our exports to the United States are down, and they do not make up for the massive loss in exports we have going to the United States. So anyways, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, do all that great stuff, and I'll see you guys next time.